Clint Eastwood, the legendary actor and filmmaker, walked into his own luxury restaurant dressed as an unassuming old man, blending in as just another diner. But what unfolded that evening was far from ordinary. Dismissed by the hostess, mocked by the bartender, and insulted by a sharp-tongued waitress, Clint endured the indignities with quiet patience. Little did they know, the man they looked down on was their boss, a millionaire who owned the very establishment they worked for. What happened next left the entire restaurant in shock. Clint's reveal not only exposed their prejudices, but also sparked a powerful lesson on humility, respect, and the true meaning of service. This unforgettable moment would change their lives forever. It was a warm summer evening when Clint Eastwood, known for his rugged demeanor and timeless charm, decided to dine out at one of the upscale restaurants he owned in a bustling city. He had kept his ownership of the restaurant private, preferring to allow the manager and staff to run the establishment without interference. Tonight, dressed in simple jeans, a worn-out plaid shirt, and an old cowboy hat, Clint looked every bit the humble patron rather than a wealthy movie legend or business mogul. The restaurant was a hub of elegance. Polished floors gleamed under the soft golden glow of chandeliers. Diners sat at tables draped in pristine white linen, sipping fine wine and enjoying gourmet dishes served with impeccable presentation. The staff moved briskly, their uniforms crisp and their smiles perfectly rehearsed. As Clint stepped in, he noticed the slight pause in the room. Some diners glanced his way, their eyes scanning his modest attire before quickly returning to their conversations. He approached the hostess stand, where a young woman barely looked up from her tablet. "Table for one," Clint said in his calm, gravelly voice. The hostess raised an eyebrow, her eyes sweeping over his clothes with thinly veiled disdain. "We're fully booked tonight," she replied curtly, without even checking her list. Clint smiled politely. "Is that so? Maybe I can wait for a cancellation?" The hostess sighed, clearly annoyed. "Suit yourself. You can wait over there." She pointed to a corner near the entrance, far from the elegant lounge area where other patrons waited with champagne in hand. Unfazed, Clint nodded and walked to the designated spot. He sat quietly, observing the flow of the restaurant. It was precisely the atmosphere he had envisioned when he invested in the place, classy yet welcoming. But as he watched the staff interact with guests, he noticed subtle signs of trouble. A server rolling her eyes after leaving a table, a manager speaking sharply to a young busboy, and an overall lack of warmth in the service. After about 20 minutes, the hostess called out, "Hey, cowboy, there's a spot at the bar if you want it." Clint stood, tipping his hat in thanks, and made his way to the bar. The bartender greeted him with a forced smile, barely masking his irritation. "What'll it be?" he asked brusquely. "Just water for now, thank you," Clint replied, settling onto the stool. As he sipped his water, Clint observed a young waitress bustling between tables. Her name tag read Jessica. She was a striking woman with sharp features and a no-nonsense attitude. However, her behavior left much to be desired. She barely made eye contact with her customers, interrupted them mid-sentence, and seemed to prioritize diners based on their appearance. When Jessica approached Clint, her disdain was palpable. "Are you actually ordering food, or are you just taking up space?" she asked, tapping her pen against her notepad. Clint looked up, meeting her gaze with calm eyes. "I'll have the steak, medium rare, with a side of vegetables," he said, his tone steady. Jessica smirked. "You know this isn't a diner, right? The steak here costs more than your whole outfit." The bartender chuckled, and a few nearby patrons glanced over, some with amusement, others with embarrassment. Clint, however, remained unfazed. "I'll take the steak," he repeated simply. Jessica rolled her eyes and walked away, muttering under her breath. As the evening progressed, Clint observed more instances of dismissive service and condescending attitudes. It was clear that the staff catered to those who appeared wealthy or influential, while neglecting others. Clint made mental notes, his sharp mind cataloging every detail. When his steak arrived, it was placed before him without a word. Jessica didn't bother to check if everything was to his liking, and when he politely asked for a refill of water, she acted as though it were a monumental inconvenience. Clint finished his meal quietly and asked for the bill. When Jessica handed it to him, she said with a sneer, "Hope it wasn't too pricey for you." Clint reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black card, one reserved for high net worth individuals. Jessica's smirk faltered, but she quickly recovered, assuming he had borrowed the card or was trying to show off. After paying, Clint stood and looked directly at Jessica. "Thank you for the service," he said, his voice carrying an edge of gravity that made her pause. Then, to everyone's surprise, he walked toward the manager's office. Jessica and the bartender exchanged confused looks. "What's he doing?" she whispered. Moments later, the restaurant's general manager, a sharp-dressed man named Richard, emerged from the office, his face pale. Clint followed behind him, his expression calm yet commanding. Richard clapped his hands to get the staff's attention. "Everyone, may I have a moment of your time?" he called out. The staff gathered, their curiosity piqued. Patrons turned in their seats, sensing that something unusual was happening. Richard cleared his throat. "I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Clint Eastwood, the owner of this restaurant." Gasps rippled through the room. Jessica's face turned ashen, and she took an instinctive step back. Clint stepped forward, removing his hat. His piercing gaze swept over the staff. "I opened this restaurant with a vision," he began. "A vision of creating a place where anyone, regardless of their background or appearance, could enjoy good food and great service. But what I've seen tonight has been disappointing." He turned his attention to Jessica, who looked like she wanted to disappear. "Your job is to make every guest feel welcome, not to judge them by their clothes or assume their worth based on appearances." Jessica stammered, I didn't know who you were." Clint's gaze softened slightly, but his tone remained firm. "You shouldn't need to know who someone is to treat them with respect." He addressed the entire staff. "This isn't just about one person. It's about a culture that's crept into this place, a culture of arrogance and favoritism. That ends tonight." Clint announced that there would be immediate changes, starting with retraining for all staff members to emphasize the core values of respect, humility, and excellent service. He also promised to implement a system for anonymous guest feedback to ensure accountability. As for Jessica, Clint gave her a choice: undergo the retraining program and prove her commitment to change or seek employment elsewhere. Humbled and ashamed, Jessica chose to stay and promised to do better. By the end of the night, the restaurant was buzzing with the news of Clint Eastwood's unexpected visit. Patrons left with a renewed appreciation for the values he had reinforced, and the staff were left with a lesson they would never forget. For Clint, the evening wasn't just about correcting behavior, it was about reaffirming his belief in treating everyone with dignity. And as he walked out into the night, his heart was lighter, knowing he had set his restaurant back on the right path.